Okay, so welcome everybody. This is David Ellis. I'm the conference director for Link, and I'm joined with a number of people here from Lincoln. Janine Jandrasitz, who's the associate conference director, and a number of our marketing, sales, and operations people are on the line. We also have Coach Nick joining us. We're very excited about sharing his expertise with you guys. So the purpose of today's call, we have this for an hour, but I don't think we need an hour. Probably more like half an hour, maybe 30 to 40 minutes max. So I'll give you a quick intro, and then Janine Jandrasitz will give you some more detail about what's new this year at Link, some things about the schedule, some things you need to know about the portal and your meeting agendas, etc. And then we have Coach Nick, who I will try to get his last name right. Papadopoulos. Nick, if I mispronounce your name, I'm probably not the first one in your career who's done that, so apologies.
Say that 3 times in a row, David.
Okay, so what Nick is going to do is, I think, give you some really interesting insights into preparing to sell in this environment of Link, which is a pretty unusual selling environment when you consider these are relatively short meetings and high potential value to you. Several people on your side, typically several people on their side, on the provider side. So a lot of potential upside in these meetings, and we want to offer this as a way to just really get you bringing your top game to these Link meetings. Okay, so just a couple things to intro. We're thrilled with our supplier side. We have about 80 supplier companies joining us this year, which was essentially our goal. On the provider side, in terms of quantity, looks like we are not going to reach our goal. We have 54 provider organizations coming. It's probably about where we will end up. So I just want to say on the quantity side, it's not where we wanted. We wanted more like 70, 75. We have scoured the universe of providers. I feel like we've actually done a very good job on marketing and on sales. And what we're learning is, and we learned this on our Home Care Link conference, which we just staged last week. We also did not hit our provider goal there, but the quality of who attended was superlative. And I'm hoping the same is true for this year's Link. Basically, I think what's going on is providers are so busy with a mix of a tough reimbursement environment combined with a huge amount of change going on in healthcare that they're consumed with work, and the idea of leaving for 2 days to come to a conference, basically it eliminates anyone who's not serious about meeting with suppliers. So the bad news is turnout's not great. The good news is I think everyone coming is a really serious buyer who have they have buying needs, and that's why they're coming. That's the urgent reason that they're taking this trip. So you be the judge by the end and let us know how we did, but don't let the quantity dissuade you or discourage you from having a terrifically valuable Link. We're hopeful these guys will impress you with how much buying intention they actually have. So I don't have the math on this, but a lot of new players that are coming to Link for the first time as well. Let's see if there's anything else. Yeah, I think that's it for the intro. So we're excited to bring you Link, and now Janine will give you some more detail. And then, just logistically for the call. So if you have any questions, guys, how do they do this? They text in any questions? Is that straightforward how they do that?
They can type them into the white chat box on the right of your screen.
So everyone's muted, so you can't speak directly, but you can text in.
Right?
Text in any questions you have, and we can see those texts live here, so we'll bring those up, and feel free to ask any questions you like at all along the way here. We'll try to anticipate any of those you have, but feel free to ask any questions as they go. Okay, with that, I'll turn it over to Janine.
Hello, everyone. My name is Janine Jandrositz, and I'm just going to give you a very quick, high-level overview of how Link works, just tell you a little bit about what is new this year, and then I'm going to turn it over to Nick Papadopoulos. So going back to when you first signed on as a supplier with us, you might remember that you completed a profile. And we took those profiles and we loaded them into an online system, which right now is currently being used by our providers to select which suppliers they would like to meet with. We ask providers in this online system to categorize their meetings and to also write their own agendas. So you might remember, for some of the more seasoned people that have been in previous years, we would call on the phone and we would interview the providers on the phone, which took a lot of their time. The feedback we got from them is that they preferred a much quicker process. They wanted to do the agendas themselves. So we're going to try to do everything that we can to get beefed up agendas, but keep in mind that they are completing them themselves, so they might not be as meaty as they've been in past years.
Which, I'll chime in, which means I think for you guys, you won't have quite the level of detail we've had in some prior years about the purpose of each meeting. So it means when you're in the meeting themselves, a little more emphasis on sort of reacting in the moment and quickly assimilating what their needs are and how to. I think it means some more flexibility is going to be needed in you guys' part, and maybe Nick, you can address that a bit. You know, we're asking them and pushing them to give us as much content about the agenda as we can in advance, but inevitably it probably means they will not share as much as ideally we'd like them to share. So it means you guys in the meetings will have to react sort of spontaneously.
Thank you, David. So one date that you're all going to want to keep in mind is July 1st. So on or around July 1st, that's when you're going to get to see who you are meeting with. You're going to be given a schedule, and you're also going to see the written agendas. You are then responsible for preparing for your meetings. Once at Link, the providers are stationed in suites on various floors in the hotel. You visit them according to the schedule you have been given. You will have 15 minutes in between each meeting to get to your next meeting. Sorry, I'm a little out of sync with the slides. I'm falling asleep here at the wheel. I meant to show you a sample of the agenda as well. So if you just look at the schedule at a glance, you're going to see when your Link meetings are taking place. There's a block of meetings Tuesday morning, a block Tuesday afternoon, and there's a block Wednesday morning. So there's 4 30-minute meetings in each of those blocks with 15 minutes in between for you to get to your next meeting. Now, in addition to your Link meetings, also notice on the schedule at a glance that Tuesday morning, you will be participating in speed meetings, which are 7. Each of you will have 7 7-minute meetings. This starts at 8 o'clock on Tuesday. The selection process for this is automated as well for you. You'll go online and you'll pick the providers that you want to meet with.
So Janine, just to interrupt you. So the regular Link meetings, the providers are picking suppliers for
Correct.
those, but for speed meetings, it's reversed. The suppliers are picking the providers.
Correct.
Yeah.
Good point. So the portal is going to open for you to pick your speed meetings dependent upon your level. Write down these dates. If you're a premier on June, chip level, July 1st. If you're executive level, July 3rd. You still, as in previous years, have the opportunity to give us your exclusions. And by exclusions, we mean you.
This would be if they're small or perhaps they're a current client. You know, sometimes people say I want to meet with everybody possible, but other times they say, well, there's some I just legitimately don't, or you know, they're definitely not in your sweet spot for.
This year we're having the supplier innovation competition. Presentations will be done live instead of in private. In front of an audience, everyone is invited to 13th, starting at 3:30. Finalists this Innovation, Gintron, Stanley Healthcare, and Swallow Solutions. Another new, yes, we had about reviewed internally and then passed on to our judges, who are, you know, representative of providers themselves who are senior living and skilled nursing CEOs of various facilities, as well as the editor. Flyers, and they haven't made the conference kicks off at noon. And this year, and we've never done this before, where you can differentiate yourself as a true leader. So if you haven't already signed up for this session and you would like to attend,
talk about today versus what you'll talk about on site at Link. We've used Nick internally ourselves. He's a really terrific coach for. He's been in a variety of industries, and it's really a value add for suppliers to benefit from his expertise. And I think it's great stuff, really valuable. It's at a minimum, it's a good refresher, but he's got some real interesting insights into how to sell more effectively.
Thank you.
So,
thank you, David. Thank you, Janine.
You're welcome. I just wanted to reiterate that providers who come to Link have very high expectations of the quality of their meetings. They are expecting 30-minute meetings with well-prepared suppliers acting as thought leaders. So we ask providers to rate each supplier on the following: level of preparation and insight into their unique areas of need, discussion of product development plans and innovation, level of consultation, 16, Link lineup. So that's going to raise your reputation with providers and increase your chances of getting even more meetings next year. So just a couple of more thoughts before I turn it over to Coach Nick. You want to make sure that you're as visible as possible at Link. Think about leveraging your team and split up during networking time. Providers are looking for answers, and as I said before, be thinking of yourself as a thought leader. And it's an intense 2.5 days, so you really have to be bring your A game, and don't forget to bring their A team. So they expect the A team from the supplier side too. So just a reminder, if you have any questions during this, type them into the white chat box. We are going to be sending you out a link. So if any of your fellow are not on this call, they'll want to listen to this link so that they could. They're going to want to click on the link that we send and listen to the call so they can get the best experience meetings as well. So on the call with us today is Nick Papadopoulos, and we call him Coach Nick, and I'm sure he would tell you to call him Coach Nick as well. For the past 20 years, Nick has served as an executive coach and trainer leading professionals and organizations in designing strategies to drive higher revenues and produce positive results. And now I turn things over to Coach Nick, who's going to give you some tips on how to make the most out of your Link meetings. Nick?
If we can go to thanks, Janine. Thanks very much. If you can go to the next slide, I want to start our conversation with, and as Janine and David mentioned, I will be with you in Chicago for the lunch educational session. We're going to spend some time there. Today's conversation is really about how to prepare both from a content perspective, meaning how to get rid of these 30-minute Link about 4 to 5 weeks. So I start with this quote: 80% of success is just showing up, because I love what Janine said about bringing your A game and bringing a version of your out as well. Bring your A game and showing up is choosing Link 2015. Congratulations, a football analogy. And now what you get to do is 20 yards. And so that's what this conversation is about, is how do we score that touchdown for those last 20 yards or that last 20%. And I think that the last 20% or the last 20 yards is really about finding ways to stand out from everyone else. I mean, you have providers who are going to be in meetings for a number of days, meeting with a number of people, both externally with you and internally with their own people. So it's about standing out, and it's also about how do you during your 30-minute meetings or in your speed meetings, how do you create excitement in those conversations? How do you get to their pain points? How do you get them to a place where they get emotional? Because when folks get emotional, excited, even scared, that's when you really start to consider making a purchasing decision. What
Hey,
you'll
Nick, mostly your sound is good, but occasionally it's getting not so loud or quite as clear. So I don't know what you can do to make sure it's loud and clear on your end.
Okay, I will, let me see if I can do something a little different. Let me again, David, if it's not working.
Sure, yeah.
So these are the types of meetings that we're talking about, right? The 30-minute meetings, there are 4 different types. There's the preliminary, actively evaluating, the educational mode, or you have 91% of the meetings fall into the first 3 categories. They're, just to the actual meetings, and we're going to review some of the steps for a 30-minute meeting, steps for a 7-minute is to prepare your frame of thinking towards the link meeting and how many meetings you're going to have, and you're going to get all that information by July 1st. I really believe that this is really important because you can relate to your link meetings and to the whole link experience as either an opportunity or as it's time to make the donuts, right? As I have to do this. And it may sound simple, but please, in this call, I think this is the most important piece. The frame of mind that you bring, meaning if you bring a frame of mind or a way of being about you, that's, hey, oh goody, I cannot wait for these meetings, versus it's time to make the donuts. I have to do this because this is something that we have to do every year. Either version, opportunity versus time to make the donuts, is going to produce a particular result. It's interesting because a version of yourself, let's say you bring a version of yourself called, hey, I'm viewing this as an opportunity. I'm really excited. I'm really open to it. I'm really excited about what's possible. I can't wait to share with the world what we're up to. Can't wait to meet old friends and new friends, etc. People, your providers, will be listening to you from that place. People speak into other people's listening. And so if you're excited and view this as an opportunity, then you're going to be listening to the provider with excitement and as an opportunity. If you relate to Link and these Link meetings as it's time to make the donuts, then you're going to be listening to your provider from that perspective. And all you're going to hear is same old, same old, same old. So I want to just emphasize here before we get into the steps of the 30-minute meeting and the 7-minute meeting that you really get with your team and you guys really get present to how are we relating and what's our framework of thinking around these meetings. Because I'll say one last thing about this, and you can tell I'm really excited about it because I think it's really important. People get your energy. They may not be able to put their finger on it, but they get how you are being and how you are energetically. And if you're passionate and enthusiastic and engaged and into it, that's going to rub off on them. And it's going to have them respond in the same way. And so if I'm you, because you're making the investment both financially and your time and your reputation, I would choose to bring a framework of thinking called, hey, this is an opportunity. To go to the next slide, I want to jump into some of the steps of the 30-minute meetings, right? So we've got our framework of thinking. We've got our framework of thinking locked in. Our entire team on your end is viewing and relating and interacting with everyone, with all the providers as an opportunity. Now we want to go through some of the steps. And by the way, if you've got questions, please, on the right-hand side, there's a chat box. You can type in any question you want and then hit question, and then we can answer it. I typed in a hello, everyone, so you can see what I'm referencing. And then later on, I'll type my address if you'd like any questions offline. Let me walk you through the 6 steps. And again, some of these steps may seem really basic and self-explanatory. But I really want you to listen to these steps. I think that's really, really important to bring a beginner's mind to this conversation. So Janine shared with you the agenda document that providers are filling out. I think as you start a meeting, it's really important to review that agenda with each provider that they completed prior to the meeting. And part of reviewing that agenda is to get them to actually agree. You want to start getting your provider in the meeting, especially in these first two steps, you want them to get into a yes mode. When people are in a yes mode, they become more open-minded. And, by the way, by reviewing the agenda and getting their alignment and agreement, you're now engaging them in the process of this sales call, which is this 30-minute meeting. One of the big takeaways from these 6 steps that I want you to get is that I want you to make the provider a partner during these 6 steps. Rather than it being a dog and pony show on your end, make it a joint venture that both parties, you the supplier and the provider on the other side, you're both engaged in this process. So step 1 is to review the agenda, get alignment from them. And here's your good news, by the way. If they say, you know what, our agenda has changed, even better, because now you can shift whatever you were going to do in your presentation, shift it to something that's going to be relevant to them. So it's really, really important to get clarity and agreement and alignment on, hey, this is what you want to be talking about. Here's who you are, and here's what's important to you. Step 2 is also about, or it's a continuation of getting the provider in the yes mode. But what's also important here is for you to state your objective, because your objective, if you say, Mr. or Mrs. Provider, the objective for this meeting is to accomplish A, B, and C, that's actually going to influence the listening of the provider. You want to influence their listening so that you know that they're listening to the very objective, to the very thing you want to be covering during this conversation. It also keeps you focused. You have 30 minutes. I mean, 30 minutes can seem like a lifetime, and at the end of the day, 30 minutes is gonna come and go. I mean, we're at 30 minutes now on this webinar, and it just flew by. And so you want to make sure by stating your objective, you're obviously influencing the listening of the provider, but you're also keeping yourself honest and focused on what needs to happen in this particular 30-minute conversation.
Hey,
Step 3, yes.
Nick, sorry, it's David. Do you mind taking a quick stab at what would a sample objective possibly be? Can you give us
the objective? Yeah, absolutely.
Pretend you're, one of our suppliers and you're meeting with a provider.
Yeah, I mean, an objective can be simple. The objective can be to provide you with clarity around the solution that we're offering, and by providing clarity and information about our solution, we plan to administer or have you do a demo during the next 30 minutes. That's the objective. The objective is to provide clarity around the solution that we're offering, offer you information about it, and have you engage in a demo during the 30 minutes. Is that acceptable to you, Mr. or Mrs. Provider? And again, as you're stating your objective, you want to get their alignment. One, because you want to continue to get them in that yes mode, but also the second is you want to make them a partner in this 30-minute meeting, rather than you just speaking to someone. A conversation is two-way. And so that's what you're accomplishing here in these first couple of steps.
So Nick, I love that one. Another one I'll just throw out real quick is around the idea of fit. We're meeting here today. I understand you are searching for a new workforce management software system, and our objective today is to explore a little more what that need looks like and have you understand better what we're about, and at the end of the day to see if there's a good potential or a reasonable potential for a better fit, which would lead to a subsequent meeting back in your offices.
Love it. That's great. That's great, David. The third, and by the way, if anyone has questions about objectives, again, please type in on the chat on the right-hand side. The third step is open-ended questions, and David mentioned earlier in our webinar about the importance of you're going to get a bunch of information from that document, from that document the providers are filling out, but that's one page, right? And so it's really, really important to really find out what's really going on here. So open probes, open-ended questions, specifically around what are the desired results, or what's their decision-making process, or what's important, or what's the priorities that they're focused on this year is really important. I'm gonna share with you a couple of questions that I think are really important, and I'm gonna say them more generally. Obviously, please feel free to add a little bit more meat and a little more richness to the questions. But again, generally you're dealing with folks who are making decisions, big decisions, and so you want to ask smart business questions so that you can impress them. So one question is, what's happening or what's going on in your organization, Mr. and Mrs. Provider, right now that has you focused on this solution, that has you interested in talking with us? What's currently going on? What's the current climate like in your organization? What's going on? What's happening that has you focused, that has you interested, that has you exploring this type or our type of solution? That's number one. A second type of question may be in the order of your strategic objectives for this year, 2015. Where does our solution, or where does this solution that you're exploring, where does it fit in the order of priorities? Part of what you're doing with these questions is you're looking to create excitement, or you're looking to create a pain point, and what you're looking to do is to qualify, is to qualify for yourself, and also to help the provider qualify, is this really the right solution? Because as you'll see in step 6 is where we talk about, should there be a next step? Should there be, right? And or what is that next step? A third question may be, what would be the benefit or the impact on your organization if you were to take on a solution like ours? Or what's the impact or cost or consequence if you don't take on a solution like ours during the next year or the next 2 years? Right, so these are some higher level smart business questions that are open-ended to start getting the provider to start sharing, versus asking questions that are very, very much in the weeds and very, very much about products and services. Let's have some questions that really get to what's the impact they're looking to make on their business and what's most important to them for their business. So that's step 3 is the opportunity to ask smart, open-ended business questions. And by the way, another question I'll
Nick, I'm sorry, I'm just going to keep interjecting here. So I just want to dovetail on that a little. I think in addition to qualifying and getting the provider excited and things like that, I think it also helps the questions you itemized help position you as a consultative business partner, because you're asking very strategic questions about what's going on inside the company. So you're not just interested in selling them a widget. You're interested in understanding their business and recommending something that's going to impact their business at a deeper level than just something small and narrow and insignificant.
Love that. That's absolutely true, David. It really is. I started my conversation by saying, part of the goal in these 30-minute and speed meetings is to differentiate yourself and to stand out. And to me, in my experience as a sales and leadership consultant, the way people or companies differentiate themselves is not through pricing, it's not through the delivery or even the quality. I mean, those things are all critical. But if you're somebody who can ask questions that get people thinking, if you're the person who can ask questions to get people to make connections they never did before, that is a grand slam. And I just want to add one other question, because I have it up on my slide. I think it's really important to ask us, it may seem simple, but really critical, what's your decision-making process? What's the process for making decisions on investments or on purchases like this one? Who's involved? What's the steps? What actually has to happen? Because that sets you up and sets them up to understand what's the second step, the third step. What happens on day 1, what happens on day 2, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's a really important question to be asking as well. So thank you, David, for jumping in. Step 4 is do something experiential to engage the provider to be memorable. Again, this is really about how do you spend those 30 minutes making that meeting memorable. Asking smart, different, provocative questions is absolutely 1, 2, and 3. And then I'm going to say reason number 4 or option number 4 is to do something experiential. And what I mean by experiential, let me say this about experiential. You know, people don't remember the things that you say, by the way. They're not even going to remember the slides that you show them, especially when you look at a schedule like they have, right? They have, you know, a couple of days worth of meetings, both external and internal. But what people do remember, what they do remember is how they felt. They remember the experience they had. And so when I say experiential, you may have, maybe you show them a video that's not necessarily related to your product, but at least it sets the context. It could be an emotional video. It could be a video that relates to your solution. Something that's is gonna touch or inspire or move them. It could be having them do an exercise of some sort where they actually have to like do the talking. They have to do some writing. They have to engage in the process. Maybe you have them actually get on the computer and run through a demo, like have them put their fingers on the keyboard. Get people engaged. Again, this is 30 minutes of engagement. It's not 30 minutes of dog and pony, because dog and pony is one way, and people are not going to remember what you say. But rather, again, please take this home with you. People are going to remember the experience that you leave them with. So we could, again, feel free to submit questions about what are some different options for creating what we're referencing as experiential. But again, I'm going to say it could be an emotional video. It could be having them do some kind of an exercise, getting them to run through a demo, having their fingers on the keyboard, something that's going to get them engaged and make it different rather than them sitting across the table from you listening for 30 minutes. Step number 5 is now that you've had this conversation, right? You've reviewed the agenda, you've stated your objectives, you've asked your questions, you've had a back and forth, you did something experiential, you showed a video, whatever it may be. Now you review the conversation. You review the different things that you covered. And again, part of doing this is to get them to say yes and to also get clarification. What's missing? What else, Mr. or Mrs. Provider, would you like to know? What else is important for you? That may give you the opportunity to say more in the moment, or that then gives you the opportunity to set up a follow-up a phone call or meeting with them. The last step, which I think is critical, and I think this is a difference maker between ordinary sales professionals and extraordinary sales professionals. As you've gone through these steps, and now you're at the end of your 30 minutes, you have the provider there. I would recommend and offer or suggest a next step while you're there, because otherwise what happens, and we all know this as salespeople, we all know that we've had a great meeting, we've had a meaningful, rich, juicy conversation, and then we say the inevitable. Okay, I'll shoot you an email and we'll go back and forth and we'll come up with a date for the next time. And what I'm going to say to you is that doesn't work. You're going to find yourself in the proverbial black hole, which is, geez, David and Janine seemed really, really interested in my presentation. I mean, I had them engaged. I showed them an awesome video. They did a demo. They were standing on their feet. We were high-fiving each other. And now it's 3 weeks later after Link, and I can't seem to find them. So my recommendation is that you schedule next steps right then and there. The next step can even be, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Provider, how about we get on a quick call next Thursday when we're back, which is whatever that date is, July the 20th or July the 25th. Let's just get on a quick 15-minute call, and let's figure out where we are with things. It could be that simple, folks. But schedule something before you leave that meeting. Have a next step. It can even be, I'm planning to send you X, and you're planning to send me Y, and we're planning to do this within the next 24 hours. But make sure you do it before you leave that meeting. So that's the 30-minute meeting. Yes, David.
So on that last point, a couple things that are interesting about Link. I think the providers, because they meet large number of people within 2 days. And of course, they've been away from the office for 2 days. So they get back to the office and their busy, lives ensue. What we hear historically from Link is what you're saying. The meetings were productive, promising, and then this sort of radio silence can set in for weeks, if not longer, on the provider side. And I think partly it's because of the nature of they just had a whole slew of meetings right away. So there's a little backlog, even more than usual on the part of providers. So I guess,
right.
And we hear from our suppliers, our clients, that we're just not hearing anything back. So we don't know how ultimately how Link is going to fare for us, and it plays out over months. So is there anything that I guess a couple thoughts. What you're saying is great, but now put yourself in the provider's shoes. So they're going to hear that from everybody. Can we schedule next steps? Can we schedule next steps? Can we schedule next steps? And they're going to say, well, gosh, they might just punt that question and say, I don't know, because I don't have enough time in my schedule to schedule the next step. But is there something that could be said about, you guys are busy, we're all busy today, and what we want to avoid is wasting your time or wasting our time. Can we agree on sort of an outer date by which a decision is going to be made, or how do we avoid calling you and emailing you incessantly over the next couple months as follow-up to this meeting? That's what we want to avoid. I don't know. Any more thoughts on how to nail this, because it's a perennial challenge?
Yeah, first of all, when I say next step, I don't even mean that the next step has to happen in the next 2 weeks. In fact, like you said, these are folks who have been away from their office for several days, if not longer, right? And they're busy anyway, right? They have their day job, and then they're in Chicago for several days. Next step could be a month from now, but at least there's something. What happens psychologically and emotionally is there's now a new date. There's now a new marker called, hey, let's meet. Let's have a conference call on August the 2nd. Let's have a conference call on August the 8th. It can be 3 weeks out. It can be 4 weeks out, but we all now have a mark we're working inside of. And inside of that marker, let's say we're going to schedule a conference call for 30 minutes on August the 10th. Great, Mr. and Mrs. Provider. What else can we do now? Okay, now that we've scheduled that next step to check in with each other, what can we send you in the meantime? Or here's a suggestion I have that you might want to do, Mr. and Mrs. Provider, or here's what we both can do between now and August the 10th. So that's one thing I want to say. I think that the second thing is, in what you said, I love what you said, which is, hey, you're basically asking them, okay, how would you like us to follow up with you, right? And part of that question, I would say, is so we don't continue to annoy you, so we don't continue to spend time on spend your time if you're not interested. How do we determine what's the best way to determine? And this is what you could do in step 6. How do we determine either now or at a later date if we're the right fit for you? So again, you're not spending time thinking about us. We're not continuing to harass you. So I think in this 6th step, I think we can all be, big boys and big girls and say, hey, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Provider, does it make sense to proceed? And if they say yes, then I would challenge that yes and say, great, here's what I'd like to recommend. On August 10th, we do a check-in call, or on August 10th, we do X, Y, or Z. So that would be my recommendation on that.
Yeah. Maybe, I don't know if you want to get explicit on this thing, but the issue of no, if I think the providers are guilty of not wanting to say no to people. Part of that sentence is, if it's not a fit, please let us know. We'd rather know with certainty so we can move on and,
Yeah, it's great. I'm glad you said that, because I actually use step 6 as a time management technique. As busy people as we all are on this webinar, let's save ourselves time by asking the question, having the real conversation when we're in front of them, rather than pretending, or rather than being worried about, geez, I don't want to upset them, or I'm not sure, I don't want to blow it. Listen, you just went through the first 5 steps. You just spent 30 minutes with these folks. for the most part, the majority of these providers are going to know if they're interested in the next step. A next step doesn't mean they're buying from you, obviously. A next step may be, let's set up a demo. Let's, let us review some of your material. I mean, or let us come back to you with a confidentiality agreement or whatever they're going to say, right? So next step doesn't mean they're going to buy from you. Most people, most of us, and the people that we're going to be presenting to in Chicago live in the maybe world. We're comfortable living in the maybe world. And part of our role is to get people to say yes and to be comfortable saying yes or to be comfortable saying no. And that's why I'm really big, in step 5 when you review the conversation and you say, hey, David, we just discussed and just shared with you, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Did we not do that? Great, awesome. Here's, based on what happened today, here's what we're recommending to do next. Are you in agreement with that? Or what would you suggest as next steps? And I might even say to them, and by the way, Mr. and Mrs. Provider, it's okay if you're not interested. And if you're not interested, we'd love your feedback as to why not, or what was our miss on this. Again, you have them there. This is your opportunity, because otherwise, and we all know what I'm about to say, people go into the proverbial black hole. Let me go to the next meeting, because I just want to make sure I've got 2 more slides and then we're complete. And I want to make sure we do that before the end of our webinar. We just talked about the 30-minute meetings. Now these are the speed meetings or the 7-minute meetings where you folks get to choose which providers you're interested in meeting. And I'm going to suggest 3 steps in the spirit of standing out. Now you have 7 minutes, so it's much different than obviously a 30-minute meeting. But what I want to say about this speed meeting is a couple of things. One way to stand out is to be a resource, is to be an educator, is to be a teacher, is to offer something to this provider that's going to benefit them. It could be really as simple as an article. And I would even suggest sharing an article with them during this meeting. Say, hey, here's an article on leadership. Here's an article on culture, on people or employee engagement. Here's an article on sales. Here's an article that I found to be really, really valuable that a lot of people that I work with have really used as a launching pad for changing, some aspect of their business. And I wanted to share this with you, no strings attached. Be someone who makes a deposit in their relationship account before they even do anything for you. If you're interested in standing out from other sales and business development people, do something nice for them without actually getting something back in return and offering some kind of information. It could be statistics for that matter. It could be some kind of a survey that you or some partner company you work with have done. But give them something that's going to have them walk away and go, hey, I want to read this on the plane ride back to my hometown. Step 2 is when you introduce yourself through your elevator pitch. Rather than talking about products and services and technical jargon, really give them the benefit statement. Folks who work with you, what do they actually get out of you? I might make a statement like, hey, our purpose, hey, nice to meet you. Share with them that article or something that's going to teach them something. And then step 2 is, and let me share with you who we are. And who we are is, we're an organization that's committed to bringing a smile to a patient's family. We're an organization whose purpose is to bring a smile to a patient's family. In that statement, there's nothing about products, there's nothing about services, there's nothing about technical jargon. Listen, people don't care about how much you know until they know about how much you care. And so what people are listening for is, what's in it for me? What's in it for me is, oh, you're going to make my patient's family smile? Okay, well, how do you do that? And so you would make that statement, our purpose is to bring a smile to a patient's family. And if you're interested, Mr. and Mrs. Provider, I'd be happy to tell you for a couple of minutes during the 7-minute meeting how we do that. So that's step 2. And then step 3 is where you start to share, more about the name of your company, any logistics or any details about your company. But I purposely leave that last because, again, people don't care about how much you know until they know about how much you care. And so steps 1 and 2 is really about having people get how much you care. So that's the speed meeting. And then I'm gonna leave you all with this last slide, which is pretty similar to how I started this conversation, which is, I started this conversation by saying, what's your framework? What's your framework of thinking? Are you viewing these meetings and Link as a whole as an opportunity or something you have to do or something that your company is making you do? Because whatever version you bring, it's going to show up in those 30-minute meetings and it's going to show up in those speed meetings. So the question I'm going to leave you with, and I'm telling you guys, it's really, really important that you answer this question before you walk through those doors and have those meetings. What's your commitment? What's your intention for these meetings? And I think it's really, really important that you and your team really get clear and connected and present what your commitment is. There's a quote, I guess I'm full of quotes today. There's a quote that I love, and I can't remember who said it, but they said, people will do things that are convenient when they're interested in something. When you're interested in something, you do what's convenient. But when you're committed to something, you do whatever it takes. And I've seen that happen in every human being and every organization that I've worked with, that when we get really clear about, hey, what's your commitment for these Link 30-minute meetings? What's your commitment for these speed meetings? What's your commitment at Link this year? Literally, what's your commitment? Like, say it out loud. Share it with your team. All of a sudden, you start to take different actions. You will start to prepare differently. You will show up at these meetings differently. So my final point is, your good news is you get to choose. You get to choose the commitment you want to bring to these meetings, and you get to choose the framework of thinking that you bring. Is it time to make the donuts, or is it an opportunity? I would offer that you choose to have it be an opportunity. That you have, when you choose to have it be an opportunity, and you make a really clear-cut commitment, you've got a better chance of it happening, whatever that commitment is that you're declaring. So I really appreciate you folks listening to the last 30 minutes. I'm going to send you my email address. I just sent it in the chat box to the right. If anyone has any questions, happy to respond to you folks if you have a very specific question. But I'm really looking forward to seeing everyone in Chicago in a few weeks. David and Janine?
Yep, this is Janine, and I'm just going to take 60 seconds to quickly answer the 7 questions that we got. I did get a question about slides, and we will send you a link to this recording which will have the slides with it, and I encourage you to share it with your executive team. I got a question about signing up for the lunch and to hear Coach Nick. Please do that at partners@lincolnhc.com, and we'll make sure that you get registered, or you can always ask your salesperson. I got a couple questions about projectors and screens in the room. No, there is no audio visual, so please bring your laptop. I did get a question. Someone wanted to see more of the details on the Link Elite Award that I talked about, the supplier criteria, so I will make sure that we get you that list.
To everybody?
Yes, to everybody on the call.
Yeah, that's good.
5, I did get a question about splits. If you have providers that have, if you have been selected for more than 12 meetings, can you split? The only thing I can tell you, have to talk to your salesperson because it really depends on your level of sponsorship. 6, there was a concern from a supplier who said they came in late and they wanted to make sure that they got into the selection process. So they wanted to know when providers were given, when the provider portal was opened up for them to make their selection. That was about a week ago. So unless any supplier came in within the last week.
There were a couple that came in a little bit late, but there will be plenty of time.
Yes, and the system is built, we have built into the system that if you are a new supplier that comes in late, the providers get notified that you have been entered into the system, and they have an additional opportunity to select you. And then finally, Joe Velderman, you had a question and we'll just call you offline to answer that in more detail.
Okay. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. Someone said they just wanted me to confirm the luncheon email, and it's partners@lincolnhc.com.
Okay. So we all set?
We're good.
Nick, any 30 seconds on what you're covering that's different in Chicago in that luncheon meeting versus today?
Part of what we're going to cover at the luncheon meeting is we're going to take an even deeper dive into how to make these meetings meaningful. Obviously we started that conversation and process today, so we're going to take a deeper dive, and we're also going to talk about follow-up. What's an appropriate follow-up? What's an effective way to follow up and continue to stand out beyond Chicago?
Okay, that's great. Okay, anyone here? Any last comment? We're all good? Okay, thank you for being on this call, all you suppliers and sponsors, and thank you so much for supporting Link. We're fired up, and we hope to deliver a great conference to you, and let's all have a really great event next month. Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Thanks, Nick.